Good evening. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting this evening. Thank you for joining us. Our special guest tonight is the Illinois State Senator Andy Manar from the 48th District. This is your opportunity tonight to ask Senator Manar any question that you might have. If you have a question for Senator Manar, please press 0 on your keypad. Press 0 on your keypad at any point, and we will get your question up to Senator Manar as soon as possible. Again, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting this evening. Our special guest tonight is Illinois State Senator Andy Manar from the 48th District. If you have a question tonight, any question that you might want to ask the Senator, please press 0 on your keypad. Press 0 on your keypad at any point, and we will get your question up to the Senator as soon as possible. We are dialing out thousands of your neighbors tonight, so do please stay on the line as we continue that dialing. We will get started in just a couple of minutes. Also, if you would like to leave us your email address and join Senator Manar's email list, please press 7. Press 7 on your keypad, and we will be sure to get your email. Let's also go ahead, and if you have a question, press 0. So you will hear me repeat this just a few more times as we dial many thousands of your neighbors tonight. I'm sure Senator Manar will also remind everybody to press 0 if they have a question. But once again, good evening and welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Tonight, our special guest is Illinois State Senator Andy Manar from the 48th District of Illinois. We thank you for joining us. If you have a question tonight for the state senator, please press 0. Press 0 on your keypad now, and we will get your question up to the senator as soon as possible. Not only tonight will you be able to ask the senator questions, but we're also going to ask you some survey questions tonight. You'll have the opportunity to respond to these questions throughout the call tonight by pressing the numbers on your keypad. But some important numbers to remember tonight are 0 and 7. Press 0 if you would like to ask the senator a question, or press 7 if you would like to join. If you'd like to join the senator's email list. So 0 to ask a question, 7 to join the email list. Again, we're going to get started in just a couple of minutes, so do please stand by. Stay on the line, and we will get going here in just a second. Our special guest tonight is State Senator Andy Manar. If you have a question for Senator Manar, please press 0. Press 0 on your keypad at any time, and we will get your question up to the senator as soon as possible. If you would like to join the senator's email list, please press 7. We're going to go ahead and get started. So, Senator Manar, if you would, please welcome everybody to our telephone town hall, and let's get started.
Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate you getting everybody on the call. Appreciate the introduction, and I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight for an open discussion about issues that we face in the state today, and many of the issues that we have tackled in the last year since I was sworn into the Senate, which I consider a privilege to represent the 48th District in the state Senate. I'm actually in Springfield. We just finished work for the day. We made some advancements with our education funding reform bill, so I would imagine that we'll take on a good portion of our discussion tonight about why fair and equitable education funding is so important for the state. But let me just say to people that if at any time during the conversation they want to submit a question to be asked, please just press 0. We do have a limited amount of time, so we won't be able to answer every question due to those time constraints. But if you did not hear the question that you've asked, please visit my website, which is Senator Andy Manar, and that's ANDYMANAR.com, and submit it through email. Also on my website, you can sign up for the e-newsletter that we put out, which gives regular updates about important issues that we face in the 48th District and, of course, throughout the state of Illinois. And while we're waiting for a few more people to join the call, let me just begin the discussion by talking about Senate Bill 16, which was a bill that I began working on immediately after taking office last January in 2013, a year ago. This was something that I view as very important as both a parent of 3 children in the Bunker Hill School District as well as a legislator, because I believe that one thing that we have to get right in this state above anything else is making sure that children are treated fairly when it comes to school funding. We have a situation in the state that is getting worse, not getting better. We own the second least equitable system in the country. So we are 49th out of 50. So many districts many school districts that I represent in the 48th district, districts that you all are calling in from, spend anywhere from $6,000 to $9,000 per student, while other districts in the northern part of the state spend upwards of $25,000 per student. And so that gap between the haves and the have-nots has never been worse than it is today. And it's been 17 years since we've changed the school funding formula, but we've come a long way in a very short period of time. And I'm proud of this as a freshman of the Senate, to work with my colleagues from all across the state and from both parties to try to solve this problem that we've been facing for well over a decade. Absent of change, the status quo is going to continue, and that's something that I'm continuing to work on and committed to trying to change. So we'll get into more of those details as the call goes on. But just as a reminder, you can press 0 at any time to ask a question, press 7, the number 7, to sign up for our e-newsletter, and you can visit the website at www.senatorandymanar.com at any time.
Great. Thank you very much, Senator. We're going to get to live questions here in just a second, but I do want to remind folks, for those of you that have just joined, just a quick update. This is Senator Andy Manar's telephone town hall meeting this evening. So if you have a question for Senator Manar, please press 0. Press 0 on your keypad, and we will get your question up to the Senator as soon as possible. Let's take our first live question on the air tonight from Carol. Carol, welcome to our telephone town hall. Carol, please tell us where you're calling from tonight and what's your question.
I'm calling from Christian County, and my question is, we have been trying to get the public transportation system going for about 4 years now, and we have gotten to the point where all the paperwork is in. They said we have our money, but as yet they keep kind of stalling us. We're supposed to call Mike Lamb. We can never get a hold of him, and I just wonder if there's something else that we can do to expedite this.
Well, Carol, thanks for asking the question. First, let me just state that, as I believe you know, my time in Macoupin County as the board chairman, we put together our public transit system, a rural transit system, and it's grown by leaps and bounds just in a few short years, and I credit our public health department and our county board for putting their heads together to work together to offer this service in Macoupin County. Much like Christian County, this service is desperately needed. I think what we ought to do, Carol, is we ought to have a meeting with the appropriate folks at the Department of Transportation, which I'd be happy to do, to make sure that when paperwork in this case is submitted, that it's proved on time, so that the projects that I know you've been working on for quite a while in Christian County move forward. So let's get that done, and I'm committed to doing it.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Just a reminder to folks, as we've had many more people join since we just started, if you have a question, please press 0 on your keypad, and we will get your question up to the Senator as soon as we possibly can. Let's next take a question from Janet. Janet, welcome to our telephone town hall. Janet, please tell us where you're calling from and what's your question tonight.
I'm calling from Decatur, and my questions, I really have 2. I wondered if it's because of Quinn that we're not funding our school districts like other places. Is he more interested in the Chicago areas rather than Decatur? And also another question is he trying to raise our taxes that was supposed to be temporary? Now he's trying to get them to be permanent, raised. I wondered if there's anything we can do to stop him.
Well, Janet, thanks for the question. Let me take the first one regarding school funding. Let me take that one first because that's the one that I mentioned in the opening remarks of the call, and it's one that I've been working on every day since I've been sworn into office. The problems we face with school funding well, first of all, let me say they're very deep and they're very complicated. But one thing isn't complicated, that in your case in Decatur, a lot less money is spent on the education of children in Decatur versus that of the suburbs of Chicago. And that's because our school funding formula doesn't appropriately account for the challenges that the Decatur Public School District faces. Because we haven't changed how we distribute money in 17 years. We are still, as a state, distributing money the same way today that we were in 1997 when Jim Edgar was governor. So it's no wonder that the gap between the haves and the have-nots is getting larger, not smaller. So we're trying to change that because what I believe is that the purpose of state aid when it comes to schools is to bring people up that are on the bottom of the spending scale so that we can have equity. Now, I want to stop here for a second because I don't want anybody to think that I believe that spending more money or spending infinite amounts of money that we don't have at the moment is going to fix every problem when it comes to our public school system. It will not, and I acknowledge that up front. But at the same time, I acknowledge that in districts that don't have resources on their own, compared to their peers in other parts of the state, without state help and without the state appropriately acknowledging that districts like Decatur that are downstate urban districts or districts like Bunker Hill, where I live, that are small rural districts, it's the state's responsibility to help those districts first so that we can have a more equitable system. So the beauty about Senate Bill 16, by the way, is that it doesn't call for spending any more money. It just calls for better prioritizing our money. It doesn't call for an additional dollar in state spending because we all know that the budget is in a condition that we just don't have money to spend at the moment, even on services and priorities that are important to people in the 48th district. But what we've tried to do in Senate Bill 16 is acknowledge the fact that we have some difficult and challenging budget times upon us, but we should reprioritize our money to fit the needs that we have today in public education. So that's what we're trying to do with that. As far as the temporary, your second question, Janet, the temporary income tax, I wasn't in office whenever that was passed by the General Assembly. It was promised to be temporary, and I believe it should be temporary. And I believe it should expire. We have to have revenue to fund state government. We have to make sure that schools, first and foremost, are protected from budget cuts. That requires revenue. But the tax increase that was enacted in 2009, there was a firm promise made to the people of the state that it would be temporary. And so long as I'm in the Senate, that's how I feel, and that's how I'm going to vote.
All right, Senator, thank you very much. Let's go to our first question tonight, where you have the opportunity, listeners, to answer a question for us with a survey question. So go ahead and press the numbers on your keypad that corresponds to your answer. The question goes like this. On January 1st, 2015, Illinois' current income tax rates will expire, resulting in a $1.6 billion loss of state revenue. Cuts would have to be made to education, social services, and other state functions in order to balance the budget. Do you support keeping the current tax rates or cutting state spending? Press 1 to keep the current tax rates, or 2 to let the rates go down and cut services. Again, on January 1st, the current income tax rates will expire, resulting in a $1.6 billion loss of state revenue. Cuts would have to be made to education, social services, and other state functions in order to balance the budget. Do you support keeping the current tax rates or cutting state spending? Press 1 to keep the current tax rates, or 2 to let the rates go down and cut services. So go ahead and continue voting tonight. And remember, for those of you who have joined the call recently, please press 0 on your keypad if you have a question for the senator. If you would like to join his email list, please press 7. So 0 to ask a question and 7 to join the email list. Let's next take a question from Judy. Judy, welcome to our telephone town hall. Judy, tell us where you are tonight and what's your question.
I'm in Springfield, Illinois, and my question is, 2 years ago my cigarettes were $3. They increased them $1 and said that would be going to education. They increased them another $1 and said that would be going to education. They increased them some more and said that would be going to education. And the lottery money is supposed to be going to education, and I want to know why we're in such a poor state in the education problem.
Well, Judy, thanks for the question. So I would tell you, I'll tell you up front that the revenue that was generated from the lottery goes to public education. The revenue that was generated from cigarette tax increases, part of it goes to public education, part of it goes to what I would describe as health care programs in the state budget. So the problem that we face with public school funding today in the state has a lot to do with how much we spend, but in my opinion, it has more to do with how we spend it. So in the proposal that we're advancing in the Senate that I'm a sponsor of, we don't change where revenues come from to fund public schools. So the lottery, by the way, is a very, very small portion of what we spend for public schools. It's less than 10% in the large scheme of things, but it's an important 10%. But back to the bill, we're not saying let's raise more revenue or spend more on schools. So the proposal that we're trying to push through the Senate, again, doesn't say let's go spend more money. But what we are saying is let's take a look at what we spend today and spend it better. So one reason why I would say many school districts are in bad shape isn't because we have bad teachers, or it's not because we have school boards that make poor financial decisions. It's because the state aid formula doesn't account for where the greatest need is today. And I would say District 186 in Springfield would be a good example of that. There's incredible need in District 186. That doesn't call for necessarily additional spending from the state of Illinois, but what it does call for, in my opinion, is spending the money that we have better, and that means focusing on districts that need help, that have high poverty, that have high unemployment, that have challenges that go much deeper than just saying we should spend more money. That's what the bill's designed to do, and that's why I hope to get it passed this session.
Great, Senator. Thank you very much. Let's go to another question. We're going to take Dale. Dale, welcome to our telephone town hall. Dale, what's your question tonight?
Calling from Hillsborough. I read in the Springfield paper that of all the pension mess that the state's in, there are two pensions that are fully paid or fully funded. One was the judges, surprise, surprise. The second was the legislature, surprise, surprise. Is that true or false?
Well, Dale, thanks for the question. Let me answer your question, and let me say a couple things just about the pension system and some of the things that we face today. So, all of the state's pension systems are poorly funded. I think you could make the argument, though, that some are better funded than others. One of the things that was contained in the pension reform bill that was passed by the General Assembly in December that I opposed was to say that all pension systems should be treated equally moving forward. Now, that's a good thing. What I didn't like in Senate Bill 1, which was the pension reform bill, again, that I opposed, was that it left the judges' retirement system away from, or it protected the judges' retirement system from the reforms that were being exacted on state retirees and teachers. So I thought that was just a fundamental problem in the bill, which is one of many reasons why I opposed it. One other thing, I don't take a pension from the General Assembly retirement system. I made that decision whenever I made the decision to leave the Macoupin County Board, where I didn't take a pension either, to run for this office. I didn't run for this office to get a pension. So the first day I was sworn in, I signed a piece of paper opting out of it.
All right, Senator, thank you so much. Let's take a question that came in earlier via email from Lisa in Hillsborough. Lisa says she's concerned about the growing heroin epidemic, in downstate. What's being done to protect our kids?
Well, a couple of things. Let me start off with a bill that I sponsored last session, which would set up a task force that has been meeting around the state to focus our attention when it comes to the heroin epidemic on, unfortunately, young adults and teenagers. We've seen statistics that in my mind are very troubling. They're almost mind-boggling about heroin use among teenagers and young adults across the state. This is a problem that isn't contained in just urban counties or in suburban affluent areas in the state. It's also issues that state's attorneys and law enforcement are facing in every county that I represent. And actually, this was a conversation that I had whenever I left the county board with our state's attorney in Macoupin County, Jennifer Watson, who was someone who pushed hard to see that this task force was set up so that we can have a strategy as a state to address this issue. Why is it important to address this issue? Because the cost of this is an incredible burden on our judicial system, on our state's attorney's offices, on law enforcement, on families, on people that don't deserve the brunt of what heroin brings to a community or to a family. So what we've done in the last year is we've tried to come up with, and we will come up with eventually, a strategy to address the heroin epidemic, much like the state addressed the methamphetamine epidemic several years ago. There was a comprehensive approach. It dealt with law enforcement and prevention hand in hand. Both of those things are important. And to me, that's what we have to do as a state. We have to acknowledge first that this is a crisis, and then after we acknowledge it's a crisis, we have to set some things in motion to deal with it. The good news is we're well on our way to do that.
Great, Senator. Thank you very much. Let's next take our live question from Joyce. Joyce, welcome to our telephone town hall. Joyce, tell us where you're calling from tonight and what's your question?
Springfield. I just asked a question about group insurance, and I got an answer on the state retirement system.
Say that again, Joyce.
I just asked a very complicated insurance question about us senior citizens, retirees of the state, being forced into Illinois Medicare Advantage program, which is not paying the bills. Our benefits are diminished greatly. No one told us this. Now they're telling me I cannot go out and buy a Medicare supplement plan to make up for what you people have taken away from us, and you're taking more and more money from me to pay for my diminished benefits.
So, Joyce, I want you to know that that I was one of the few members of the Senate that voted against this bill. I think maybe only a handful. And I'll tell you why I voted against it. And I went against my party, and I went against the administration, because it was clear to me that other states that had been in the Medicare Advantage business for several years were doing whatever they could to get out of it. So I stood up and questioned, why is Illinois trying to get into it when clearly other states are trying to get out of it? I think everything that you said is spot on. I think over time, probably not that long a time, I think we're going to understand how much of a ill-advised course this was from the administration. And that's why last year when this bill came for a vote, I was one of the very few people in the General Assembly that didn't vote for it. And I haven't changed my mind. I don't think it's a good idea. And there is an effort right now to undo some of those things legislatively. And it's my hope that before we adjourn the session, at the end of the month, that we'll have some of those things sent to the governor so he can sign them into law.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Let's take a question from Colleen. Colleen, welcome to our telephone town hall. Colleen, where are you calling from tonight, and what's your question?
Springfield. I'm calling from Springfield. I'll preface my question first. Well, first, my question is, do you support House Bill 5707, which puts schools in the position to partner with parents in an attempt to support behavioral issues of children who do and do not have disabilities such as autism, so they become contributing members of society rather than being prepared for our correctional system? You know, years ago it was the sole responsibility of parents to ensure their child had the ability to manage their emotions and behave appropriately in school with peers and teachers, but the family structures have changed, and school districts haven't kept up with the social changes in Illinois. Because currently, right now, if a child misbehaves, the kid's punished at school. If they misbehave enough, they're suspended and expelled without being taught how to respond differently to being called names or bullied. So my concern is, what is your position on House Bill 5707?
Colleen, thank you for the question. I believe that we voted on this recently, and I just looked it up. I supported the bill when the vote came in front of the Senate for the very reasons you just mentioned.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator. We're going to take another question from, I believe it's Janelle. Janelle, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. But
yes,
tell us where
Mel.
you're calling from tonight. What's your question?
I'm calling from Decatur, and my question is, what effect does Senate Bill 16 have on the schools in the suburbs of Chicago, and is there opposition to Senate Bill 16 in that area?
Janelle, thanks for the question. It's not a one-size-fits-all proposition. So let me begin by saying that there are many suburban school districts that support the bill, and there are many suburban school districts that oppose the bill. And there's many downstate districts that support the bill, and there's many downstate districts that also oppose the bill. What I think is important when we talk about which districts win or which districts lose, which is what legislators like to say, is that we have a conversation about how we better prioritize our resources in the state. Many of the suburban districts, for example, that I consider wealthy, they have very low tax rates compared to yours in Decatur, for example. And with that very low tax rate, they raise exponential amounts of money. And as opposed to in Decatur, where you have a higher tax rate and you raise less money for the public school system in Decatur with that higher tax rate. That's an inverse relationship that poses many challenges then for Decatur. You know, in the most extreme cases in the state, there are some districts that couldn't tax themselves enough through property taxes if they wanted to, even if they wanted to bring about equity. So what our bill does is it acknowledges those circumstances. So many of the districts in the suburbs that are opposed, they're opposed because we're prioritizing our resources differently. These districts, by the way, have some of the lowest tax rates in the state, and they spend the most per pupil, upwards of $20,000 to $25,000. My argument with Senate Bill 16 is not to punish those districts. I'm not interested in punishing a school district in the state. I'm happy that we have some of the best school districts in the country located in the state of Illinois. They just all happen to be located in one place. What I'm working for is to make sure that my kids in Bunker Hill and the kids in Decatur and the kids everywhere else in the state have the same opportunities as those kids that go to those suburban districts. That's a tough call. That takes a little bit of courage as a legislator. But this is something that has to be done because we can't be satisfied with just having a small handful of districts in the state that succeed and call that a win. We should make sure that every school district in the state is succeeding and gives every child the opportunities that they deserve.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator. We're going to take another survey question tonight. This is an opportunity to give us some feedback. So we're going to ask another question tonight, and the question goes like this. Currently, Illinois has one of the most inequitable education funding formulas in the nation. Senator Menard has proposed legislation to alter the formula to bring more money to districts that need it, resulting in more funding for most downstate school districts. Would you support such a formula change? Press 1 for yes, or 2 for no. Again, the question is, currently Illinois has one of the most inequitable education funding formulas in the nation. Senator Menard has proposed legislation to alter the formula to bring more money to districts that need it, resulting in more funding for downstate school districts. Would you support such a formula change? Press 1 for yes, or 2 for no. Go ahead and continue to answer tonight as we take our next question from Claudia. Claudia, welcome to our telephone town hall. Claudia, please tell us what your question is tonight.
Hello.
Claudia?
Yes,
Go ahead, Claudia.
I'm calling about the conditions of the roads and highways in Macoupin County. They're just really terrible, and I'm just wondering why farmers can't pay a higher fuel tax to help cover the cost of repairs in the county. I live off of 267 and Route 16, and they're just terrible.
Yeah, Claudia, thanks for the question again. Ironically, I was just working with the Department of Transportation to repave Route 16 from Southwestern High School all the way to 159 in Royal Lakes. That road, as you well know, has been in bad shape. It's a state route. It's been in bad shape for quite some time, and I think we're going to get that done this coming construction year. One of the problems that we face in the state is that our road fund, what we call the road fund, the fund that taxes are paid into and road construction is paid from, has an upside down balance in the very near future. Cars are getting better gas mileage. People are driving less because of the price of gasoline. In addition to those things, materials that rural townships use, such as rock and oil, those material costs are going up as well. So we have a pretty severe situation on our hands that I would say is a result of inaction from the legislature. Again, this is similar to school funding. This is not an easy conversation to have. When cars get better gas mileage, that means people buy less gas, which means less money goes into the road fund, which means that's less we can do to maintain and to construct roads. So something here has to change. I don't have a magic solution for this one, but there's been groups that represent business, that represent the contractors who build roads, that represent labor unions, that employ the men and women who construct the roads, put their heads together in a cooperative and bipartisan effort to try to come up with a long-term strategy to fix this. I would use this as a classic example of Springfield and the legislature ignoring problems until they become a crisis, and I think we're pretty close to having a crisis today. I saw this firsthand when I was the board chairman in Macoupin County that has, hundreds of miles of roads in addition with townships in Macoupin County. And we have an upside-down situation. It's going to call for a major reform effort in Springfield, which is a hard thing to do these days. But we shouldn't shy away from it because absent of change, we're going to be on the same path we're on today. But I'm committed to doing it. I live in a small town, in a small township, and I understand the value of both township roads and city streets and state highways.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Let's take another question tonight let's go to Dixie. Dixie, welcome to our telephone town hall. Dixie, tell us where you're calling from tonight and what's your question.
I'm sorry, this is Vicki.
Oh, Vicki, I'm sorry. I apologize, Vicki. Go ahead.
That's okay. Okay. Senator Menard, I would like to know, you said that the spending per student in the suburban areas is significantly more than those that, like, say, we live in Decatur. With that much of a gap in each student, what exactly are them students getting that our students are not getting for that kind of money?
I'll give you a couple of examples, Vicki, and I'll just say this in a general sense. Part of what Senate Bill 16 seeks to address is the idea that when a student gets to high school, they should have available to them at their convenience advanced placement courses, vocational education courses, career pathway courses, and most importantly, dual credit courses. Dual credit courses, let me talk about that specifically. Those are important because those courses give students in high school college credit while they are in high school, so that when they graduate, they have credits under their belt, which at the end of the day makes them more prepared to enter the workforce immediately. It also saves middle-class families a lot of money. Those things aren't afforded to nearly enough students in enough districts in the state. And while many districts that I represent have some of those courses, there's many that don't. And I would say there's one firm example that every school district in the state should be offering career pathway, vocational education, and dual credit courses that saves middle-class families money. It makes our state more competitive to employers. When we produce high school graduates that have those skills, that makes our state extremely competitive. And when we only have graduates in large numbers that have those skills when they graduate high school in some parts of the state, it's no wonder that in those school districts where those courses are offered as a matter of just doing their daily business, that's where we see the lowest unemployment in the state of Illinois. Where we see districts that don't have those things offered, not because they don't value them, but because they can't afford them, because they do cost a little more money, that's where we see the highest unemployment in the state. So there's a direct correlation between these things and employment, not just in Illinois, but across the country. So there's one example that I say is a real-world example that we could have a tremendously positive impact on school districts to offer these things to high school students. That would cost a little more on the outset. We incentivize those things in the school funding formula bill in Senate Bill 16, but in the long run, it saves us a lot of money because it gives students, when they graduate high school, career skills which are attractive to employers, and those are things that employers look to when they decide where they're going to go and expand their business.
Great. Thank you very much, Senator. Let's next go to, let's do Dixie this time. Dixie, what's your question tonight?
Hi, my name is Dixie, and I'm from Taylorville. And I'd like to know what the state of Illinois is doing to encourage jobs. I think jobs are something that we are very lacking, not only in specific communities, but it seems like that we are not a state that is friendly to bring in different companies. It seems like the other states like Texas and maybe some of the Carolinas are very pro-job, and I think that would cause a ripple effect to where it would decrease the cost of our social programs. It seems like here in Illinois, because we have no jobs, that the social programs are not a hand up, but a way of life.
Yeah, Dixie, let me tell you about a bill that I passed last session that I sponsored, and I had a lot of help to pass it. Actually, I shouldn't take all the credit for it. And the governor eventually signed, and it did a couple of things. And there wasn't a whole lot of fanfare about this bill, but it was very important because it gets at the root of your question that you just asked. And again, this is through my experience as a local government official in Macoupin County for 8 years, and then a mayor of a small town for one term. I'm of the belief that in other states, first of all, such as Texas, you mentioned Texas, that corporate giveaways, almost as a nature of doing business in state government, is not a good public policy. And I would say that's the focus of a state like Texas. I don't think that's a good public policy for the state of Illinois. While it produces a number of jobs, it's not a good use of our taxpayer dollars to give those dollars away to corporations with no strings attached, number one. But back to the bill. We passed a bill that said the state needs to prioritize its resources in areas of high unemployment. And we could look no further than what is called the EDGE tax credit program and see that when the state gives tax credits away to companies, they don't prioritize those companies to create jobs in places with high unemployment. To the contrary, there's actually a prioritization to create jobs in communities that already have low unemployment. And there are areas of the state that have been recession-proof. And those aren't areas that I represent. It's not your neck of the woods. It's not my neck of the woods. We've been hit hard by the recession, and we continue to be hit hard. And what we need to do, and we set this into motion in a new law last year, is to say that the state can play a vital role. The state doesn't create jobs in the private sector, but it can play a vital role to help facilitate those things. And we need to start in areas of high unemployment first and foremost. Areas like Decatur, areas like Montgomery County. There are things we can do to facilitate job growth, but it takes the priority of the state government to get it done. That's why we passed a bill to force that on the state government.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator. Let's do another survey question tonight. We're going to allow everybody here to answer this question by pressing numbers on your keypad. The question is this. Would you support a proposal by local legislators to prohibit storing potentially harmful chemicals above the Mahomet Aquifer, which provides drinking water to nearly 750,000 people across central Illinois? Press 1 for yes or 2 for no. Again, would you support a proposal by local legislators to prohibit storing potentially harmful chemicals above the Mahomet Aquifer, which provides drinking water to nearly 700,000 residents across central Illinois? Press 1 for yes or 2 for no. Go ahead and continue voting tonight. Then let's next take a question from Pat. Pat, welcome to our telephone town hall. Pat, what's your question tonight?
Yes, Senator. I certainly support your Bill 16, and I appreciate your attitude of using the funding responsible. But my question is, recently some of your legislators added an additional $3.5 billion to the governor's proposed budget. How come these legislators are not being responsible? In municipalities, we have to cut back when we don't have the funding, and as individuals, we cut back when their income isn't coming through. This can't continue, or there won't be a state of Illinois. What can you do, and what are you hearing about this increase, constant spending of money that we don't have? I mean, the federal government can print money, the state can't.
Pat, I would agree with what you said. Let me just give you my brief record before I got here to Springfield. I'm very proud to have balanced a budget every year as an executive, as a mayor, and as county board chairman, with the exception of one. And that was a year Macoupin County lost its coal mines. We lost hundreds of jobs, and we lost a significant amount of our revenue in county government. We took a budget deficit that was approximately $900,000 one year. Within a year, we cut it down to approximately $275,000 or $300,000. The next year, we balanced our budget. And we didn't do that by laying off employees. We didn't do it by cutting pension benefits or health care benefits of employees. What we did was we worked cooperatively as Democrats and Republicans with our employees to make sure that we had a high-quality county government. That starts with, by the way, having a balanced budget. I think so much emanates from the idea that the government's books have to be balanced. It's disciplined, it's pragmatic, it makes sense, it's what individuals and families have to do, it's what businesses have to do. And I think it's something that government just ought to do. That requires tough choices. That requires, difficult decisions on the part of lawmakers, and that's what I'm committed to continue to do. There's some good things, by the way, that are happening in state government. The number of unpaid bills has dropped significantly from $12 billion down to about $4.5 billion today. That's a sizable reduction. We still have a ways to go, but that's a sizable reduction. There's no new borrowing being contemplated, and I've been a voice against borrowing money to pay operations costs. There's very few smoke and mirrors in the budget proposal this year. Now, that's not to say we don't have sizable decisions to make, but I will say this. I think that in the Senate, anyway, we're taking a very open and honest look at the budget. And I know that I'm committed to only supporting a budget that's balanced, that balances the need for revenue with the need for preserving core services such as school funding and health care and other things. But we have to balance these things, and we have to be thoughtful about it, and we have to have difficult conversations. So what I'm trying to do here, and I've only been here about a year, but what I'm trying to do here is exert some of those things that I did on the county board at the state level.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's next take a question from Renee. Renee, welcome to our telephone town hall. Renee, what's your question for Senator Menard?
Hi. Yes, I would like to ask the senator what's being done. I'm in Decatur, Illinois, and anybody that lives in Decatur knows that we have a really big problem with housing as far as we have numerous houses that are boarded up, and so many foreclosures and so forth. Those houses that are boarded up are being, how should I put this nicely, unboarded, if that's a word. I don't think it is, but I'm making it one, however. And therefore prostitutes, drug addicts, drug dealers get into those houses and make problems, and it's unsafe. Kids then go by, they kind of get into those houses. Rats get into those houses by garbage that are left into those houses by people that have been in those houses and walked away. It's just a really bad problem. I know it's a legal problem. A lot of legal issues have to go on before houses can be torn down, especially if people have owned those. It takes an estimate $10,000 approximately to tear a house down. It's a very expensive endeavor, but I don't know if you've been around much of inner city Decatur, which is about the entire city. You would just see one house after another that is boarded up.
Yeah, Renee. Whenever I was going door to door before I was elected, and even now, whenever I visit neighborhood organizations or I visit people on their front porch, this is a continuous issue in Decatur, in Springfield, and let me say this, and even in small towns that I represent. There was recently a program that was adopted a few years ago that's administered by the Illinois Housing Development Authority that seeks to get at this problem that you've described. And it has, for the first time, this is the first year that it's been in operation, and there were so many applicants, and these are cities that apply for money from the state to help deal with this issue. So the cost of tearing down a dilapidated piece of property or a derelict piece of property, in conjunction with tough ordinances on the city level, there were so many applicants from across the state in small towns and urban downstate communities and large upstate communities that clearly there was an underestimation of the severity of this issue. So what I think we ought to do, and what I'm going to try to do, is to assess how that program works during its first year, and if it works successfully, which I believe it will, that we would seek to expand it by not raising people's taxes, but by going after people who don't take care of the property, that own the property but let it become abandoned and let it be a place where things that you described happen, which is too common. It's way too common in Decatur, and it's way too common elsewhere in the 48th district. So what I think we should do is we should assess that program after its first year. I think it's going to be wildly successful, and I think we should put some more emphasis behind it.
Great. Thank you, Senator, for that response. We're going tonight to take our last survey question, and that question goes like this. Would you support or oppose increasing the minimum wage in Illinois from the current rate of $8.25 an hour to a proposed $10 an hour? Press 1 if you support the minimum wage increase, or press 2 if you oppose the minimum wage increase. Again, would you support or oppose increasing the minimum wage in Illinois from the current rate of $8.25 to a proposed $10 an hour? Press 1 if you support increasing the minimum wage, or press 2 if you oppose increasing the minimum wage. Go ahead and continue voting tonight. We're getting close to the end of our call, and I'm going to ask the Senator just to share a few words about some of his legislation tonight. But also, if we don't get to your question tonight, at the end of the call, you have the opportunity to leave us a voicemail. Please leave us a voicemail with your name, your email address, your phone number, and your question, and the Senator's team will do their best to get back to you as soon as possible. So, Senator, if you would, please go ahead and wrap up for us and take it away.
Well, again, thanks, everybody, for spending some time this evening having this discussion. I appreciate the insight and the questions that were asked. I want to close by just reiterating one more time how important school funding is, not just to downstate, not just to the 48th district, but to the state as a whole. We do have a state system that is crumbling. It's going to call for courage on the part of the legislature to fix it. It hasn't been addressed in 17 years, and this is a critical issue for the state of Illinois. If we can't do this right, we are going to become less competitive. We are not going to be able to attract the employers that we need to attract in areas of high unemployment, and that calls for a dramatic but what I call an appropriate change when it comes to funding schools in the state of Illinois. I started this call by saying that, I approach this issue as a parent. Tristan and I have 3 young children in Bunker Hill. That's where I went to school. And things need to change for Bunker Hill. They need to change for Decatur. They need to change for the districts that need resources in the state. And Senate Bill 16 is something that I'm going to continue to work on and fight for and ask my colleagues to support me on, regardless of where they live in the state or regardless of what party they belong to. So again, thanks for joining us on the call. If you have any questions, of course, you can leave a message or please call one of my district offices. The Staunton number is 618-635-2583. Again, the Staunton number is 618-635-2583. The Decatur district office number is 217-429-8110. Again, the Decatur office is 217-429-8110. And the last thing I'm going to say is that, I've done about 30 in-person town halls in the 48th district in the past year. We're going to continue those in the smallest of towns and in neighborhoods in both Springfield and Decatur, because I think it's important that I'm accessible and accountable to the people that sent me to Springfield to do this job. We're going to continue those, and I hope you enjoyed this time on the call tonight. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone, and good night.